Today's sponsor of the Vision Quest podcast is 920 Hat Company. Leather patch hats are in, and 920 Hat Company is here to hook you up with your very own custom hat. All patches are lasered on top-grade genuine leather and on popular brand hats like Richardson and FlexFit. Whether you're looking to show off your business or want a one-of-a-kind hat for yourself, 920 Hat Company can do it all. All the hats are handcrafted right in the Fox Valley, but worn across America. With over 500 hats in stock, they guarantee fast turnaround times. Honestly, Liam, looking at these hats, solid, right?
Yeah, they're pretty. I like them.
I like that patch itself.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one-of-a-kind stuff. I know his name's Trevor. He does great work. He's actually gotten I think we got a knit hat coming.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we got that coming. So we're really excited to have these guys on board as a sponsor. So get down to check them out on Facebook. I believe they're on Instagram. Check them out, man. They got the best hats, I think, in the Fox Valley, if not in the state.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So get down to 920 Hat Company on social media and check them out. All right, everybody. We are back. We took a little break, end of the folk style season, kind of getting international styles, but we are back. We are back to talk to someone who is bringing up a pretty good program that's about to pop into the D1 scene. We have Coach Ned Shuck of the Bellarmine Knights. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Been excited to have you on. We talked to Noah a little bit, got to know one of your coaches and talked to him. Definitely told him we got to get Coach Ned on, and he said, "Yeah, we gotta." He's like your handler. He's almost your handler.
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
He is doing a good job. So enough about Noah. We're here to talk to you. So. Now, Coach, you're down in Bellarmine, and so let's just kind of just a quick synopsis of where you're at now. Where were you just before this, and what led you to Bellarmine?
Yeah, so right before this, I was at West Point, associate head coach. I was out there for 3 seasons with Coach Ward out there, and in terms of what led me to here, there's a lot that goes into a job change, obviously, but I think if I were to sum it up into maybe one thing is I love a challenge. And I think this was a great opportunity for me in my career to be in the head coach role at a Division I level. I had been a head coach at the collegiate level before, but not at the Division I level. And the opportunity to grow Bellarmine wrestling, to be a part of Bellarmine University's, ascent to Division I.
Yeah.
There's a lot that is easy to be excited about that, but you factor in a lot of other components, right? I have a wife and 2 boys, and so making sure that it's a fit for them. My oldest is in 6th grade now this year.
Okay.
And so you got family things that are important and need to consider, and having a location where you feel really comfortable and good about raising your kids is something that is important to me and my wife. And so there's a lot of components, is there a church nearby that's going to fit and, with what we're doing? There's, it goes down to everything, but spending time here on my interview and getting to meet the people that I'd be working with on a regular basis, getting to meet the administration and the people that I would be, working under their leadership. It was really encouraging to me and something that got me more and more excited when I got here for it. And I was happy to hear that they wanted to offer me a job and we were able to work it out.
That's awesome. Well, and like I was just mentioning before, watching just some of the stuff that you guys put out there on social media, it's been a fun year watching you guys. I mean, knowing what you're about to break into and seeing the progress that your guys have made just throughout this year, it's pretty fun to watch. So I know those guys look just as excited as you do when you guys are on the sidelines and just you got a good match going on. Everybody's into it. So it's really fun to see that. It looks like you're creating a really good culture down there. So let's kind of dive into you a little bit more. So have you always been in wrestling? Have you ever since you can remember? Or was this I was a freshman in high school kind of thing? Where did wrestling fit in your life?
It probably fit in, at a real young age. My brother, some member of my family, wrestled, and so. But probably started with my brother just beating me up. He was 6 years older than I was, and he was a wrestler. And, my mom kind of helped start the youth wrestling club in our small town.
Oh, no kidding.
Grew up in a small town
Okay.
Mapleton. She was a part of a lot of that organization and all that back in the day. So I didn't start competing a couple years after I started wrestling. Probably in second grade was my first time I started competing.
Yep.
Yeah. So has it been around? Absolutely. It's been around kind of, since I can remember anyway.
Yeah. So you're just kind of like me. I used to get thrown around a lot by my older brother up in the attics, and those guys were all like trying to get to state. And I was just this little kid getting just pummeled by these guys that were like 8 years older than I was. But so you said Mapleton, is that Mapleton, Illinois?
So Mapleton, Minnesota.
Oh,
so
okay.
Maple River is a school district. So
nice.
Yeah, but I always tell people is my town was so big, it was the biggest in the district, and we had 5 towns combined, and mine was the biggest at 1,500 people. So yeah,
nice, huge. So coming up, it sounds like you actually had some support. Your mom was part of helping build a program. Your brother was in. So when your first like real memories of wrestling, what were your real memories? Just kind of being with your brother in a practice room, or are you guys practicing at home? Like, was your, how did that kind of all come about where you finally got into a competition and you started, where was that the moment where you're just like, I really love this sport? Or were you kind of a multi-sport guy too?
I did do other sports. Probably when I was younger, I loved wrestling. I was best at wrestling, but
okay.
I also hung out with a lot of older kids that played football.
Sure.
And so, in my younger years, I played more backyard football than anything. I mean, it was literally every single day after school, we played. Everybody, hey, we're going to the spot, and it was a rough game. Like, it was a really rough game. Like, there was no mercy.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that I was, 5-6 years younger than some of these guys we were playing with, didn't matter. Like, we were getting tackled, and we were trying to tackle them.
Yeah.
I loved it. Right. It was intimidating and fun all at the same time. And I played with some wild dudes that they didn't have a lot of fear of their personal health and wellness. They didn't really hear too much about that. And so I played a lot of football, but my first memory of wrestling in terms of competition was my first event, because I was scared, absolutely scared to compete. Like, didn't want to, like, I was so scared, didn't want to lose, that was fear then. And so we got my first tournament, literally like kind of freaking out, stepping on the mat. I still remember that. I still remember those emotions, and and I ended up pinning both of my guys, but I think it was just I was able to release all that and
energy,
and it worked out. And then I got a nice cool trophy at the end of it, and I was like,
nice
pretty cool. I could do some more of this, right? I could do that. Yeah, just like any kid, man, I was getting medals, getting trophies was cool, and made you feel good, and like you accomplished something, and that, that was, as a young kid, a big part of the motivation. I was just last night, I was just doing on a video call with Pat Smith, who was one of my high school wrestlers, has now been in the senior Greco scene for a while. But my youngest, my kids love him, right? They're, he's their idol, of course. But, but I was on the call with him, and, all of a sudden my youngest comes, traipsing down the stairs, and he's got all of his medals on, to show Pat how many medals he's gotten and stuff. And so
that's awesome.
I try to direct the focus a little bit off of that for them. But I mean, kids are kids, man. They're going to love medals, and it's part of it. And I'm okay with it. I'm hoping to grow them and to switch that focus into just being a love for the sport and appreciation for the challenges,
Yeah. And that, I think that all comes with the growth. I think you probably found that out too. I mean, especially you were nervous with your first tournament, and then you won that. And then, a lot of the bugs get kicked out. I think a little bit after that, the confidence gets picked, especially as a kid. I remember I wasn't great at wrestling. I quit my junior year of high school, but I can remember my first event. And I think if I were to go on that mat now, I would have gotten just smoked. There's just with the level of coaching, with where kids are, nerves wouldn't have mattered. I would just gone out and just wrestled and probably just gotten beat. But I mentioned before, you had a really good support system. So when you started kind of, getting into it, and with your mom being involved, and parents and grandparents, like, was there ever a moment where you felt pressured it within the sport? Like as a kid, like, oh, my brother did this, I got to do this. Or were you always just, kind of focused on who you were and what you were doing?
Yeah. I never felt like my mom was the driving force in terms of support.
Yeah.
And like unconditional support, right? It didn't matter to her whether I won or lost, right? She just loved that I loved something and it was active and doing something positive,
Yeah.
In my young years, there was probably a lot of, my elementary, middle school years were some rough years for me in school and things like that. And so she was happy just to have me doing something positive and really supportive of doing that and something I liked,
Yeah.
And so, that I never felt the pressure that I had to win. For me, it was just, I just really wanted to win. I was very competitive.
Yeah.
And that was something that was driven into me by my brother. My brother was always very encouraging. He's going to be, oh, you're going to be a state champ in high school. You're going to be, like he would always say those type of things, but I never looked at it as like, I have to be a state champ or, or this person, whatever, like I was letting somebody down. And so I never felt that kind of pressure, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But I put a lot of heat on myself to accomplish the goals. And I worked, tirelessly to try to make that happen. And well, in terms of any pressure in that side, it's probably just more. My high school coaches were great too. They were awesome in terms of that, the support and just focus on continuing to get better. And I never felt anything from them like, I got to win or any kind of negative energy pressure that way from them.
Right on. So as you started growing and growing in the sport, were your, because your state right now is different. I don't know what it was when you were a kid, as far as coming up through, youth wrestling and then middle school wrestling. Were you going to a lot of national tournaments after a while? Were there things that you guys were doing that other guys weren't in your area? Was you were just kind of in the area sticking in Minnesota doing things?
It was just Minnesota. Yeah, it was super, super small town type stuff. Like we weren't, in terms of me traveling out of state to compete. The first time I did that to compete was my high school coach scheduled a individual tournament in Iowa.
Okay.
And it was like Clear Lake, which is just like right over the border.
Yep.
Right. I think that was the first time. That was probably my sophomore, junior year, maybe the first time that I competed out of state.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm sure there were events going on, but it was things like I wasn't aware of things. Even though my mom was really involved in the youth scene and that type of stuff, it was, hey, all the local stuff, and that's what we did. But national tournaments, I didn't, if there were some, I didn't even know about them. We did the local NYWA state tournament, and that was kind of it.
Okay.
So I didn't fly on a plane until senior nationals, and that was in Pittsburgh. And so like, that was the first time I ever took a trip anywhere on the plane, so.
Wow.
So from that side of things, when we traveled as a family, it wasn't for wrestling. If we traveled anywhere, it was for a family reunion, and maybe in Wisconsin or northern Minnesota. But that's as far as. Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. So as you're growing, as you grow up, you're coming through like grade school, what were some of you had that first one, like second grade, but what was like the biggest moment you had as a youth wrestler that kind of really grabbed you and you were like, I want to do this. What was that one moment?
Yeah, I think there was maybe, I don't know if it's youth, but I would say 8th grade. That's probably when I remember it was the state tournament, and it was, age group middle school stuff. Right.
Yep.
And I won the state tournament there and had a good tournament, had a good performance.
Yeah.
And wrestled some kids, and just felt good about that going into, because my 8th grade year in Minnesota, you can compete 7th and 8th grade in varsity. Right.
Yep.
My 7th grade year, I think I had like 10 or 11 wins. My 8th grade year, I had less. I was in between weight class type situation. Wrestling up, didn't have a lot of success. So after having a high school season, not having that success and be able to compete in that middle school event against same kids, or same age kids, and having that success, I was like, okay,
yeah, that
was kind of like, I still am pretty good at this thing.
Yeah. And
still really enjoy it, because that was kind of a rough year, my 8th grade year, just not getting a whole lot of W's,
Yeah. It's that growth period too. And with Liam right now, especially, he came from 8th grade at like 125, and then he goes into freshman year at like 160. So there's definitely transitions. It doesn't matter where you're at, because that was one of those things where I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, but we'll find out. So did you wrestle high school at all in that 7th, 8th grade span? Did they pull you up for varsity?
Yeah, so I wrestled varsity in 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wrestled 103, I think my 7th grade year, and then my 8th grade year, I was just a mentality that we don't cut weight type of deal, and the coaches were cool with whatever. We had a pretty good 112 pounder. I weighed probably 115 pounds.
Yeah.
And I had to wrestle off with a 119 pounder, didn't beat him. And so I wrestled 125. So it was a little bit tougher with the weight, but
yeah, that takes balls. Yeah, that's a good weight difference. I mean, you think about wrestling 125, those guys are cutting from another weight to get down to 125. Yeah. So now you're coming in light. That's impressive. So and you said that obviously was a little bit of a tougher, season or whatever, but then you came through at the end. Were there aspirations of going to college to wrestle, or was that any part of your thought process, or were you just kind of, I'm enjoying it, I'm going into high school kind of thing? Did you have any of that thought at all?
I didn't at that time. Nobody in my family went to a 4-year college university to, especially involved in athletics. And so I didn't really even, conceive wrestling in college,
Yeah.
That didn't come until much later. And I shouldn't say it didn't come until much later, because that 8th grade year after that state tournament was when I got my first camp flyer. An Iowa wrestler, Joel Sherritt, was there, national champion, had Minnesota ties, and hand out a camp flyer for the Iowa wrestling camps.
Okay.
And that was the first exposure I had to Iowa wrestling. And then I found out about Iowa public television. I was in southern Minnesota, so I could start watching.
Yeah.
Public, right? And so, that's kind of when things started feeding into it. But after going to the camps and things like that, that's when I was like, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
I want to be like whatever.
Nice.
Mark Ironside,
yep.
Lincoln McAravey, Joe Williams, those guys started, coming into the scene. Jeff McGinnis.
Yep.
They just had so many guys during that time. I was like, that was a cool spot to be. Bill Zadek, so from that time frame, kind of my college stuff just kind of grew as I continued to go to those camps and,
yeah,
get into my junior, senior year. That's when I started, okay, let's start looking at this college thing. I looked at some other colleges and did some visits and all that. But every time I was just like, I want to be at Iowa. And so that's kind of how my college choice went.
So now we know where you went. Let's talk about just your freshman year of high school after your 8th grade year, though. Where did that transition because you, like you said, you were wrestling a heavier weight or whatnot, going into your freshman and sophomore year? How were those seasons for you? Was that freshman year coming out of, I guess, middle school, quote unquote, was that an easier transition because you guys had that and you were already used to the scene? You weren't too worried. You already knew what was coming at you. How were your first couple true high school seasons coming out of a middle school year like that?
Yeah, I think things changed for me after I went to that camp in terms of my dedication to doing more work. And so 8th grade came, I went to that camp. I said, all right, so I started doing morning runs, morning drills, morning lifts.
Yep.
Right. Staying after practices, doing more more stuff that way. So that's really where my work ethic, picked up and started getting serious about it. So the 9th and 10th grade seasons were, as you can imagine, were a lot more successful just because of the work I was putting in and how serious. But I was pretty familiar. I knew I wanted to be a state champ, in those younger years, but I didn't really have the knowledge and I wasn't taking action to really make those things happen.
Okay.
And so that 9th grade year, that, finished that 8th grade year, summer leading into 9th grade year and 10th grade year, those were, I'm going to be a state champ years.
Yeah.
Yep. And, I tell the story all the time. After we went to that camp, I stopped eating candy, stopped drinking pop, start living healthy. Right.
Yeah.
got my heart broken at our state tournament qualifier and didn't qualify my 9th grade year, and kind of, messed up my shoulder a little bit.
Okay.
So I remember every year, my mom would bring me up to the state tournament, probably starting in 5th, 6th grade. And so I got to see, the high school stage, which was like, for me, was just like, oh my gosh, this is from small town Minnesota kid, like seeing, being in the Civic Center and seeing the state tournament was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And so not being able to qualify and get up there was heartbroken. So I'm up there in my 9th grade year watching the state tournament, and I'm like, well, I can't wrestle for a while. I got the shoulder thing going on. Let me try. I can try a pop here, So that's kind of when Surge was just coming to the scene. Oof. And so you don't get small beverages, right? You get when you get the Civic Center, you get a big old thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I tried it there, and I got a quarter of the way through, it got a massive headache, and just, all right, I can't do pop. I can't do this. So
over with. Yeah.
But that time is, really where things kicked into gear for me. Those first couple of years, that 9th and 10th grade year, and even my 10th grade year, I lost a true second match to go again, and didn't qualify for the state tournament my 10th grade year either. And so,
it
was
all right.
It was those hard. Yeah, I took the hard road. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to me, and I talked to, a couple of the coaches, even Noah, just talking to him about some of the stuff too. It's some of those, that stuff goes a long way, because now you can relate. Now you can sit down with that kid that just had that heartbreaker, whether it was a placement match or just getting to a certain, level or whatever. You're able to sit down with them and kind of meet up with them mentally and physically and be like, look, I know where you're at. And I think that's big. I think it's special. I think every coach has been through that, whether it's on the competition side or even on the coaching side. I think that's really important, that whether you're good or not, whether you were good at that sport or not at the end, coaching, when you're coaching, it really matters if you can relate it to the kids. And I think that's big. A lot of times we sit there and we look at other coaches and we see them, we're like, oh, well, they did this in college, and that shit doesn't matter. That it matters in the long run of the mental side. So I think it's huge that having to go through that, and I didn't even want to waste the time of going through that because I hated losing. So I just stopped because I sucked. You guys kept going, and that's a big thing. And I think that speaks volumes for what you guys are able to put in front of another athlete. So we've kind of talked a little bit about freshman, sophomore year. Wasn't what you wanted, but shit happens. But now your junior, senior year, as you start kind of getting into when we talked a little bit about Iowa, and you start kind of getting getting some looks, and maybe people are calling you, talking to you. How was your junior year of wrestling? How did that kind of pan out for you, especially having those 2 seasons and not getting what you wanted? How did that go?
Yeah, it was a lot more successful. I don't think I took very many losses, maybe a couple, 1 or 2 losses.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, made my first state tournament, and then I lost in the finals at state. And it was okay. I got the opportunity. I got there and kind of put myself in position to achieve my goal, and then fell just short. And so that was same type of deal with my senior year. I got there. I knew my toughest match was going to be in the semifinals, and I lost in the semifinals and ended up having to come back and take third. And so two heartbreaking years, right? That, never once accomplished my, outcome goal of being a state champ. And that was heartbreaking.
But you're going through this process though, as far as, even through your seasons, you're getting contacted, right? You're getting like universities a little bit.
My junior year, nobody was really contacting me.
No.
Just because, again, you're sometimes, small town kids know this too. It's a little bit different now. You got a lot of ability to see kids wrestle, but really they're not, these colleges aren't seeing me anywhere. They haven't seen me in any results of state tournaments or anything like that.
Sure.
The past, that see me coming through. And so after my junior year, of being a state finalist, then I started getting some contacts, but my junior year was pretty light. So
that's a unique process then that you had to go through. Cause we talked to a couple guys, a couple athletes that, and not every guy was getting contacted after the sophomore year. Not every person is, but they kind of mentioned, oh yeah, junior year things started kind of rolling along. So I'm born in I was born in 79. So, I mean, we didn't have any of these tournaments that I traveled to Pennsylvania, all this other stuff. They didn't have it. So with that being said, how are you, because your goal is to wrestle in college, you had that kind of in your head. What kind of process are you going through then to get to where you want to go as far as getting to that next level? How are you navigating those waters?
I'm not. I'm not. I'm just so not. I was so naive.
Okay.
I had no idea. My coaches kept saying, "Hey, who are you talking with?" And I would just tell them, "Hey, I'm talking with so and so and whatever."
Yeah.
We're going to visit. No, I'm not going to do that until whatever. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to Iowa. I'm just going to go to Iowa, right?
Going to walk on.
I didn't even have concepts of like, are they going to contact me?
Yeah.
After I won the state title my senior year, anything like that. Like,
okay.
None of that stuff was in my mind. For some reason, I was just thinking, I'm just going to go to Iowa.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, had no idea about scholarships, walk-on thing, anything like that. I get, like I said, very naive to the process. My high school history, and did some economics classes with Jason Fickett, with my wrestling coach. And, it was after my senior year, and he's like, "Hey, have you got things set up with Iowa?" I was like, "Oh, I got my application in, but they weren't calling me and contacting me. Right.
Yeah.
I was a no-time state champ from Minnesota. Like
yeah.
15 miles away from me was the Hustis brothers, who, were some of their top recruits,
Yeah.
And so like that was the Minnesota guys they wanted. Right.
Yeah.
And so from that side of things, my coach is like, "Well, you should probably, contact, Coach Lesky." And I still remember this day. I'm like, and kind of told him, "Hey, to do that." I'm like, "Nah, do that." But he was trying to like encourage me, like, "Dude, hey, you kind of got to get figured out, And so I got my application, did the acceptance process or whatever.
Okay.
And he's like, "You need to talk to Coach Lesky." But this was after the state tournament my senior year.
Okay.
I still hadn't talked. And
wow, you were waiting a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm walking into his class, and he's basically on the phone. Right. I don't think anything of it. Every day I would just walk into his room. "Hi, Coach," I'd come right up to him,
Yeah.
And we had a relationship. He's a fantastic dude. Just an incredible man, a big mentor of mine.
Yeah.
And he's on the phone, and he's like, I hear Iowa wrestling, on the back. And it was the secretary at the time, right?
Yeah.
I wish having a secretary here would be pretty cool. We'll have to work on that at Bellarmine, but it was like Iowa wrestling, and he's like, "Yeah, is Coach Lesky there?"
Yeah.
And they say, "Hey, can I ask who's calling?" And he goes, "This is Ned Shuck, a recruit," And I said, "Okay, here goes," and they like send him back to Coach Lesky, and he just hands me the phone. And so
that's awesome.
So from that side of things, like, he's like, "Hey, I got," I'm like, "Hey, Coach, I was thinking about walking on. I've been at your camps, what's it going to take to walk on?" And Coach Lesky walked me through the process of, "Hey, this is when you need to show up. This is whatever." Right. But that was it. I had one phone conversation with Jim Zaleski. I went on some other visits. I actually did the J-Rob 28-day camp.
Nice.
To see Minnesota was really strong then. I was like, all right, let me go check out this University of Minnesota thing.
Yeah.
Did some of those things, but that was the one phone call. And that's all that Jim Zaleski needed to do to recruit me, is to pick up and talk to me one time.
Awesome.
Otherwise, I probably still would have showed up and just said, "Hey, what do I got to do?
I'm here."
Yeah.
So that's
very, very non-traditional recruiting methods compared to how we recruit athletes now and whatnot. And again, it was a big part of me just being naive and I didn't have a brother. My coaches didn't wrestle in college.
Yeah.
Right. So they hadn't been through that process necessarily. They were probably a lot more knowledgeable, but I wasn't really seeking out from them. Just in my mind, I'm going to be at Iowa.
Yeah. I'm just walking in there. Hey, I'm a Hawkeye. Yeah. So that's a unique situation though, because we always talk to these guys that always talk about, coach called me. You were a walk-on. Okay. Technically you're a walk-on. So how does that process go? So you had to do the school paperwork. So you got accepted in the university. So, I mean, obviously your grades were good. You're staying on top of that. What was the walk-on process like? Do you just say, hey, I want to try out for the team? You got to go wrestle guys. How does that work?
I mean, really that phone call was it. He told me the date that I should show up, for the team meeting, and never called him again. Just showed up at that date for the team meeting and time. And and so I had the part of that was like the medical paperwork, right?
Oh, okay.
NCAA stuff, right? You got to sign. Yeah. Back then we didn't have nearly as much as stuff the kids got to sign nowadays.
Like that thick now.
But part of even part of my going to campus, like I tell people, like orientation, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't need. In my mind, again, naiveness. Orientation was a campus visit. I'm like, I've ran in all the camps I've been to. I used to go months of camps there. I do I do 2 intensive camps in a row, is what I do pretty much every summer. Right.
Okay.
I'm like, I've ran really every inch of campus. Like, I don't need a campus tour, but they called me up like 3 weeks, before school starts. I'm like, hey, are you coming? I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. They're like, well, you need to sign up for classes. I'm like, can I do that like over the phone? And they're like, no. You need to come down. You need to come down here, And I was like, okay. Cool. And again, this isn't coaches, right? This is the admissions office. I'm like, yeah. And what about dorms? I haven't got anything on dorms. Like, oh, you're not getting in the dorms. They're like, yeah, we got a wait list, that's hundreds and hundreds of people. And if you want a dorms, you're getting to the bottom of that. So like, if I haven't already like expressed it and showed in what I've told my stories, you're like incredibly naive, right? Just have no idea.
Yeah. You're like a guy coming off a boat on Ellis Island, just like, hey, throw me a paycheck. I'm here, That's pretty cool. But hey, you had the confidence of not worrying about much, like you were, I'm just ready to do this kind of thing. I want to get in. This is what I'm coming to do. So did you kind of get like, were you kind of panicky maybe for a minute? Like, oh shit, am I not going to get in? Like what's going on here?
Yeah, I didn't.
That's good.
Somehow I was going to find it. Like somehow I was going to find a way. If something ran up, I was going to find a way. And but so yeah, it was, that team meeting and kind of getting things and setting up and reintroduced myself to coach and let them know here to do whatever they needed me to do. And I was excited to be here. And when's the building open up type of deal, that type of deal. And
because I need a place to sleep.
Yeah, actually my first spot was about 35 miles outside of town. I had distant relatives. I had a 7:30 a.m. every day Spanish class. Like just everything wrong, right?
That was the best class to start with. Yeah.
But so I'd get up early and come into Carver, to work out in the morning. Because that's in high school. I worked out every single morning.
Yeah,
it's just what I did, right?
Yep.
And I just assumed that that's what everybody else did too. Like that's what Iowa Wrestling did. Was every single morning everybody would be in there working out.
That myth gets debunked every time.
Yeah, and so I'm in there and Joe Williams was doing some individual workouts with some of the guys, that type of thing, and like a couple times, like they just, kind of wave, like they don't know who the hell I am.
Yeah.
But I'm in there just working out, working the Atom dummy, bike and lift, staying some motion on the mats, that type of stuff. I didn't know anybody yet. So I didn't, wasn't, hey, let's meet for a drill or anything like that. Right. So I was just coming in and it was like probably 2 weeks in, and Coach Williams saw me in early because he must have had kind of one of the earlier shifts, and he just kind of came up to me one day and he's like, "Hey, are you going to come in every single day?" I was like, "Yeah,
dude."
I just assumed like everybody else, I had to be out of there right by whatever 7:00, so I get to my 7:30 class on time. So I just assumed anybody I wasn't seeing was just coming in after me.
Yeah, that's all.
So
you're setting the pace, man. You're like, come on, get everybody else in here.
But so it was just, that was a very very interesting. And I was just nowhere near the level that they were. I mean, returning national championship team and coming into that. And I mean, it was just.
So it's funny. Yeah. Were you around with Mako? Was Steve Mako there?
Yeah.
So it was funny. He had in his Flow documentary, he talks about how when he left Iowa, went to Oklahoma State, and, it's like everybody says the Iowa room's so much tougher. They do things so much different. He goes, I get to Oklahoma State room. He goes, it's the same thing. It's no different than any place else. Yeah. He's like, oh man, I thought I was walking into like a completely different situation. But so what weight class did you start out at?
I wrestled 41 and 49 in college. Yeah.
Okay.
So
who are your practice partners? And that would have been, is that Michael? Did you have Michael Ravy in the room?
Well, Coach McAravey was graduated. He was competing. I came in, my first year in college was the fall of 2000.
Okay.
And then through 2005. So Lincoln's senior year was 97. So he was still training and competing.
Okay. Yep.
And coaching and that type of deal.
Okay. Right on. So when you started kind of, I mean, was your first year just kind of, you're doing some opens, you redshirt? Was that how your first year went? Was a redshirt freshman year?
Yeah. Yep. Redshirted that year. Same type of deal, kind of like you were talking before with the whole tournament side of things. Like I didn't wrestle a ton of college matches. Like we wrestled open tournaments, maybe the first, month of November, maybe something in December.
Yeah.
Maybe one after that in January.
Yep.
I wrestled the Midlands maybe a couple times, but outside of that, like I didn't have a lot of competition, and I had a decent amount of injuries too during my college time too that kept me away. Apparently, when you're not at that level, your body is a little bit more at risk for getting beat up and getting injured. But yeah, no, it was just different. Yeah, we didn't. Now it's like, hey, if you're a backup on a team, you can still get 30 some plus matches.
Yeah.
And just wasn't. And part of that, like my redshirt year, like I was dirt poor, so I wasn't paying for myself to drive to Pennsylvania for an open tournament or something like that. Like,
sure.
That just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So
I got you. Yeah. I mean, and that's interesting too, because I mean, these kids that do go into college, they don't know that stuff. They don't, go into when you're redshirted and you're going to open tournaments. I mean, that's not all on the buck of the university. That's a lot of that stuff. You got to be able to, parents are still around. They got to give you a hand with some of that too. So yeah, a lot of that plays into it. So were you always reserved? Did they pop you in during some duels? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, probably the closest I got to that was wrestling potentially a duel at Michigan.
Okay.
Was at home actually against Michigan.
Even better.
I think Ty Hustis was he was a starter at the time at 149.
Okay, that's right. Yeah,
And so I was behind him, or 141. I think that year might have been Luke Moffitt, maybe.
Okay. Yep.
I might be, but yeah, so I was behind both of those guys. So I didn't get an opportunity to start in duels, but I thought, hey, there's a chance that I was, going to get to compete in that because he was kind of getting sick, and then they kind of said last minute he's going to go. So
right on.
That was close I got. So yeah, I never cracked the lineup and got an opportunity. Mike Zadek was a guy. Cliff Moore was a guy at 149 and 141. So I was behind those guys.
Yeah, that's tough.
My last year was probably my best, opportunity to win the spot at 141.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost to Alex Sertzis in an open tournament.
Okay.
And he took the spot, and so.
And that seems to be the commonplace with those guys as far as how places were figured out. Because even watching like Gilman with those guys, I can't remember what open they were at, but he wrestled against whoever that was, but it was the open tournament they were at that determined who was going to have that spot. Yeah. I find that interesting. I think it's a little less, room stressful, instead of having just a wrestle off in a room. It's a little more.
Yeah, we like that. Very similar to how we do it, right? We want our guys to be able to determine against competition.
Right.
Like beating a teammate, like Luke Moffitt, beating him was like, okay, I felt like I had a great chance at winning that match against Luke, right?
Yep.
I could study him. I could but I could get closer, to that. And I I don't even know if we had a wrestle off that year at that weight or not, but maybe we had during the coaches clinic, might have had something.
Okay.
But like, for, me to beat him would have been like, okay, technically I would be the starter, right? But
yeah,
he pinned his way through the Big Ten tournament, to guys that like I wasn't beating those guys,
sure.
So it's like,
yeah,
the competition level, like he was a dangerous wrestler, and
yes,
rightfully so. Like he was the best guy, and he got the start, and that's just
right on. That's how that stuff shakes out. Yeah, I mean that's just kind of, and you guys know. I mean, obviously you'd been in the process already, so it kind of, if you're not comfortable with it, then you don't stay, kind of thing. But you guys kind of knew, and you knew what you were walking into every year. So with your college career, in how things played out, panned out, whatever it was, were you always in the mode once you got to college? Were you thinking, I'm going to coach? I want to coach. And once I'm done competing, I want to stay in this kind of thing. Was that a mentality you had right away, or were you more junior, senior year kind of thinking that?
No, I always knew I wanted to coach. My high school coaches did a great job getting me involved. Like, actually, the former coach before my high school coach came in had me as a manager, right, in 6th grade.
Nice.
As a manager, I traveled with the team to do books and whatever, just help out with whatever he needed. And so I traveled with the varsity team in 6th grade just to be the manager, and that was really cool.
Nice.
So I got to kind of see a little bit of coach perspective there and things that the coaching staff were talking about, because I had to sit up front with the bus with them, and I remember a couple of upperclassmen give me a hard time. So I remember the 6th grader stepping on the bus with a box of donuts in the morning, before going to a tournament for a weigh-in. So coaches helped educate me a little bit, but I even then, I helped. I knew, like, hey, this coaching thing is meant for me, and to kind of go into the naiveness, not to continue to reiterate how ridiculous I was, but even going into college, right? How much it was just, I'm going to wrestle at Iowa.
Yeah.
It was like, I showed up to that meeting to register for my classes, and like, all right, what do you want to major in? I'm like, well, I want to be a physical education and health teacher, right? I figured, hey, if I add that health component, that's going to make me really marketable in the job market, right?
Yep.
They said, physical education and health is what you said for education. I'm like, yeah, I want to coach wrestling and do that. And they're like, we don't have that here. Like, what? You got like 50,000 students here at campus, don't you? Like, you don't have physical education and health? Like, they're like, no, we didn't have that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll be elementary education then, right?
Yeah.
So, but it was always coaching, right? I always wanted to coach.
Okay.
And so I knew that going in. I knew that during my entire time there. And so I really just tried to soak in everything, from Coach Brands, Coach Lesky, Coach Zadek was one of my individual coaches.
You were around some good dudes, man. Yeah.
Oh my God. It was incredibly blessed. I was at, Terry was just like kind of in and out, like right at the beginning of my time in 2000. I think he ended up, I don't know if that's when he took over at Chattanooga or he was still training or what happened there, but he wasn't around much. But yeah, Lincoln Rackaravy, Joe Williams,
man,
Mark Ironside was around a lot, and then all the alumni, right?
Yeah,
Royce Alger, you could take it or leave it for him.
Alger, man, love that guy.
But there was just so many guys, and even my later years when Coach Brands, went to Virginia Tech, Troy Steiner came in and Tim Hartung came in.
Yeah.
And so I got thrown around a lot of great people.
Yeah.
Obviously Coach Stable was great to have him around. And so every time I was interacting with those guys, I knew it was stuff that I was going to take as a coach and bring back to the athletes someday. And and just because I knew what I wanted to do.
So as you're, and obviously the coaching thing was always in the forefront of your mind, even going through college. Where was your mind, like let's say your senior year, as maybe this season's coming to an end. Were you kind of talking to guys already? Like, hey, you need help here. Where did your real foot start in the coaching world when you really started dedicating to it?
Yeah, kind of after I realized I wasn't going to be the guy at Big Tens, it was, okay, I guess I need to start looking for a job,
Yeah.
And so the education department did a good job there. They had some career fairs and things like that where people from all over would come. So did a bunch of interviews. Typically wanted to go back. I was dating a girl, was attending school in college, but we were both from in Wisconsin, but we were both from Minnesota.
Okay.
And so the plan generally would be like in an ideal situation, we both move back to Minnesota and, kind of do that deal. But I had some really intriguing offers in Texas and actually Las Vegas was paying like the teacher pay there, and that type of stuff was like really intriguing to me compared to what I was going to get in Minnesota.
Sure. Yep.
It was close to almost double.
Oh.
And so I really considered a couple of those opportunities and pretty heavily, and end up finding a job back in Chaska, Minnesota, is where my first head coaching position came for high school. So
okay. So going back into the competition realm is, as you know, you went through high school and things like that. Were you looking at not just obviously the pay, all the lifestyle stuff that you have to think about? Were you also kind of thinking, well, I want to make sure, like you talked about, like now Bellarmine, liking a challenge and coming, starting from the bottom and maybe working your way up. Were you looking for something as far as a high school coach to be able to put your stamp on, or are you looking to possibly, because not everybody wants to walk into an entire challenge every single time you go into something, but with that being said, were you looking for schools too? Like, oh, well, let's see what this school did history wise. Were you in a wrestling rich history type school when you went there?
No, they had a good senior class that finished up right before I came in. Actually, Andy Bezic, record medalist from Minnesota, graduated there, right? And it was a number of years later that he on the Greco scene really had strong performances. But so they had a big senior class at Chaska before, and I think that might have been one of their winningest seasons ever. But before that, they really hadn't done a winning season. And their team never qualified for the state tournament or anything like that.
Okay.
And so, like you're saying, the challenge piece for me was like, I knew, hey, if there would have been a job open at a high level program, I would have grabbed that as fast as I could. Right. Sure. Chaska wasn't there yet, but it was something for me. I was like, okay, we're going to take this program.
Yep.
And build it into the national powerhouse. Like that was just my plan. Yeah. And very blessed to be able to have the opportunity that Mike Hauk, who's U.S.'s first Greco world champ, worked at the Olympic Training Center as a head national teams coach for 5-6 years, I think. Yep. Teaching in the district as well. Okay. Involved a little bit with some of the youth clubs type stuff and that. And so, but wasn't on the high school coaching staff. I'm like, goodness, we got to get this guy involved. And so we happened to be teaching the same middle school. Nice. And kept bothering him and show up at his classroom every single prep period I had, before school, after school. And we just developed a great, friendship, and that's good. And I was pretty relentless to on him, but it was awesome. We had, he's just an absolutely incredible man. Mm-hmm. And his coaching, I've out of all the people I've worked with and learned from, there's nobody I've learned more coaching from than him. And it was just a pretty special time, the 4 years I had with him coaching. That something I still miss working with him for sure. Yeah. Well, and those bonds, like I've always told even some of the athletes, those coaching bonds, whether it's athlete to coach or even coach to coach, those bonds go a long way. I mean, because you guys go through certain things, either with an athlete or just a team or just that season in general, certain things happen. There's just no way to not build that when you guys are that close. So when you got into the coaching, you were there for 4 years. What were some of the highlights of those 4 seasons because you told me that they had a pretty good senior class. So it's not like there weren't some type of building blocks in place for, see where maybe you can take success from the level that they had already and kind of build off of it. Well, what were some of the moments that you guys were able to build going through those 4 years that you coached there? Yeah. I mean, I still remember being at a football game. Pat Smith was an 8th grade kid that, little guy that, I think he qualified for the state tournament.
Yep.
And just remember meeting him, seeing him at a football game, and just having this conversation. We probably had other conversations before that, but
yeah,
just telling me, you're going to be the future of this program. Like your work ethic, what you're willing to do. Like I'm like, we're going to build this thing around you.
Yeah.
As a 9th grade kid, and that was probably the wrong thing to say at the time. He probably didn't do that. But ultimately that's what he did. He started working out, every day. Morning type of workouts, and he got just a load of other people behind him, and that morning crew started building. We never did mandatory workouts in the morning, but all of a sudden, as we continue to grow that, by the time I my last year there, we had 20 plus kids working out in the morning because they wanted to be there, not because we were holding workouts and I was making them be there. And we with Mike and I mean some of my favorite memories was me, him mentoring me as a coach. Like I'm all over the place, and I just remember one time just being like, hey, and I had a ton of respect for him, right? And he knew that, and he knew exactly what he could communicate to me and all that. And I just remember one time being like, hey, do you think your actions, your what you're doing on the side of the coach might be having an effect on your athletes? I'm like, I get you're going here. Yeah. Like, what are you saying? And he kind of let me know, like, just kind of one of those things, like not everybody reacts to the energy that you bring. You're not trying to stifle the energy. Wasn't trying to do anything like that. Right.
Yep.
But he was smart enough to recognize that some of the athletes tighten up and they think they need to be doing something that coach wants them doing. And when I got that high energy, it's not always a good thing. Right. And so just little, that's a real small example, but I just remember him coaching me and just helping me through so much of those little things and how to build relationship with athletes and be able to recognize and read a room and make adjustments to training. And
he's helping you become just a little bit more of a leader.
Oh my gosh.
Just a little bit more.
I mean, every step of the way, it was, like I said, I'm just incredibly grateful. I learned so much from him.
That's awesome. So you guys you created a culture. You guys created a culture at the school you're at, which is important. I mean, we're in Kaukauna, Wisconsin, and that's a big culture here. I mean, it's getting into the weight room in the off season. That's just high school. So they're creating that culture that is almost, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, expected once they get to college, because now it's a whole different level, and everything's, even just from youth wrestling is a whole different level now. But with that culture that you created, and now the knowledge that you have and the experience that you had with the mentor that you had, how was transitioning to another coaching job then for you after those 4 years? Were you getting contacted? Was it just something that you wanted to be on a different level of coaching? What were you looking for after those 4 years?
It was a unique situation with the year before. Sam Barber, who was at Augsburg at the time, had asked me if I'd be interested because I was working with Men USA, freestyle and Greco programs a lot. And I ended up being the head cadet freestyle coach, for a couple years there.
Nice.
And so that was kind of like, I got intrigued by it, but I was still like, I really wanted to work with Mike. I just really enjoyed working with Mike and what we're building. And I was having time with that. And so I kind of said, no, I'm going to stay coaching high school. And then, the high school made some decisions that they didn't want to move forward with myself and Mike as the coaches. And so I was like, okay, that was kind of a shock and a surprise. Given the success we had and breaking, pretty much every school record there was to be broken during that time.
That's crazy. Had
some things going on, but it would probably take you about a nanosecond to figure out what might've been behind some of that stuff. And so that opened up the door again. And Mark Matzik, who's at the time, and Jim Olsoff were coaching at Augsburg. And they said, hey man, we'd be really interested in having you come over here and help out. So, Mark and Jim had me on campus, and we kind of talked through some things, but we were still working through. We had a lot of people fighting for us on our behalf, and end up getting the job offered back to us. And there were some terms and things that I wanted to see happen on the school's part.
Yep.
We were going to come back, and I would have done that probably just because, again, I love working with Mike.
Yep.
And they didn't fulfill that. And so that's all right. I'm moving on. I'm going to go coach at Augsburg, which is a great program to be with in terms of my first college experience. So
yeah, totally. I mean, just watching what those guys this year, I mean, that's just a storied program in itself. What an opportunity. Number one, you're working in high school, your first coaching job, you're working with one of the guys that you look up to and admired, but now you're able to not only take the knowledge that you learned from him and expand on it, but now you're going to the college level at a really good college school. Your wrestling school in college. So with that being said, did you have any intimidation walking into a room like that, coming from a high school, going into a college? I mean, I know where you wrestled and the guys you'd seen, things like that, but that's can make you a little nervous sometimes walking into something that's already been built. It's there. Those guys had been doing some stuff for a while. And then on top of that, you have all these guys that are probably coming from, wherever in the nation that are some of the top wrestlers. How was that for you, kind of with that transition?
Yeah, it was really cool. I wasn't intimidated to work. I knew I was going to be able to bring them some good value in whatever role they saw fit for me to be active in. They have a number of coaches on their staff. And so, it was more so for me figuring out what the coaches, what Mark and what Jim, wanted, and Jared Evans, those three guys were coaching. I'm like, what are you guys expecting? I think Jared Evans was the head assistant at the time with Mark, and so it was just kind of figuring out from those guys, like, what will you want to see out of me? What things can I bring to the program that you need most? That type of stuff, and so figuring that realm out. But it was day one of practice for me that, I understood, like, this is the right fit for me. Like, I need to be coached at collegiate level, and I need to be a head college coach.
Okay.
And that was that wasn't something I was thinking about. I was coaching high school, I was having a good time. I had my mindset on building that program, and but it took literally day one for me to realize this is exactly where I need to be. And I want to be a head college coach. So
that was your stepping block into the college. And I would assume that you had a good tenure there as far as Augsburg goes, because I mean, I don't know how you can go wrong there. So how long were you at Augsburg?
I was there for 2 seasons.
2 seasons. Yep. Okay. So you're able to get a little more. I mean, it's not only nice having a good coaching staff like that, but those guys have really good contacts. So you get in contact with these coaches at Augsburg, you're working with those guys, a lot of knowledge there. Are you then, because of this transition into the college scene that you had, are you then now talking to a few more college coaches and they're saying, hey, there's this opening up here, I heard this guy's looking for something? How was that transition from Augsburg to your next step?
Yeah, I was the year before, I think I had reached out to I think St. Cloud State maybe had an assistant position.
Mm-hmm.
I gave Coach Costanzo a hard time about this before, but but he had Brady came in, I think, and got that job. But he didn't even call me. Like, like he either had his guy or he wasn't interested, whatever it was. But I never even got a call. And they went on to kick butt for a long time, and they're still very successful, right?
Yep.
So it worked out very well for them to get Brady in, but ultimately, it was after my first year, and I told my wife, hey, I really like to explore head college coaching positions, and she kind of said, let's give it one more year. She was teaching in a school at New Prague, Minnesota. She really enjoyed. She had a great staff that she was working with, and just incredible group of people, and was really enjoying it. And I was not enjoying teaching. And like, I know I'm being called to be a head college coach. And so, my second year at Augsburg, I was in that realm of looking for them. And then, just NCAA jobs type of deal, looking on. I really wasn't talking to a lot of people about I interviewed at Iowa Lakes for their head job
Yep.
at the JUCO school there. Didn't get that. A couple days later, interviewed at Heidelberg University, was where my first head job in Ohio was, and I got that. And so
yeah,
it worked out really well. I really enjoyed my time at Heidelberg. It was a really cool first college head coaching position to be in, and
yeah,
we had a lot of fun.
Cool. And how many seasons were you there?
I was there for 3 seasons. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're able to almost get a culture in place as far as the way that you kind of envision things to go, and how many special kind of things came from that era as far as what you were doing.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, that culture was, those guys, still was able to develop a really special bond with them. Still talk to a lot of them.
Yeah.
Going to one of their weddings this weekend up in Cleveland. And so that group, my first freshman recruiting class I brought in was 33 kids.
Wow.
And so worked really hard. And my first year I didn't get to recruit because I came in kind of late June, and I think I might have been 1 or 2 kids, but didn't have a whole lot of time to get anything going there really with recruiting. But so after my first season, pulling those guys, and that just the culture change that happened with that group of guys was pretty incredible.
That's cool.
And one of my former athletes went on to coach with me at Whitewater. Actually, a couple of them from there.
Really?
Went on to coach at Whitewater, and that was it was a very special time. 100% blue collar. Our wrestling room was like old World War II barracks.
Oh, nice.
Called the Tin Gym. It was just rugged as all can be. And it was cool. I just really special time there, and
nice.
Developed some really cool relationships in the state of Ohio with all the high school coaches and stuff too. So,
okay. So with that being said, then, because with 3 seasons now, where did the transition at that university come? Was that just it was the end of the 3rd season? You get someone contacted you kind of thing? Cause you mentioned Whitewater. Was Whitewater after this one?
No, Whitewater was right after this. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got a call from a friend that just said, "Hey, just looking at scheduling, for next year of the team. And
yeah,
did you happen to hear that, something went down at Whitewater and there's going to be a coaching change there?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't."
Yeah.
I was like, "Wait a second." Like my wife went to the Whitewater, she went to lacrosse.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is the Wisconsin state system that's significantly closer to our family.
Yep.
In Minnesota. The year before that, and the Ohio national teams I was a part of, we dropped in at Whitewater to do our kind of our pre-workout before going to Fargo.
Okay.
So I'm like, when we did that, I'm like, I want you to come with. I said, if this job ever opens up, it's a big school in Division III.
Yep.
I think there's some, I want to check this out. I know you know lacrosse really well, but let's check out Whitewater.
Yeah.
And so we drove around campus during that time and kind of checked things out. And literally the next year it was open. And I remember just walking away from that meeting with her and saying, "Man, if this job ever opens up, we'd be interested."
Yeah.
We were having a lot of success, so it wasn't like something that we were anticipating this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, that opened up great, and, interviewed for the job, and ended up working out great, getting it. And and then was my, 4.5, 5 years at Whitewater. So,
okay. So again, that enough time, 4 or 5 years is enough time to actually, build another, build culture. So, were you walking in because you kind of already knew, like you said, they're having success. It wasn't maybe something you needed to walk into and change the culture. Was it maybe this time the culture there changed you a little bit? How did that work out going with Whitewater?
I think they probably would have wanted that to happen that way. The culture to change me.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have been a little more open-minded. I don't know, but as a head coach, I just feel like, when you do take over, no matter what the situation, I got an opportunity to meet with the athletes in the interview process, which was really cool.
Oh, nice.
Because I tell them, like, hey, I'm not Coach Fader, like
right.
This is how I'm going to run things. I assume that you guys loved your coach. You're here for a reason. You guys have had success, but I'm not him.
Yep.
And we'll be doing things differently should they choose to go with me. And I'm not going to try to replicate how he did certain practices or training or anything like that. Like,
yep,
we're going to come in and do what I think needs to be done. And some of the policies and some of the rules and things like that I had were drastically different for him.
Sure.
And it didn't get met with a lot of, thank God, Coach, so you're bringing this to the table from alumni too, so
sure.
There's a lot of hiccups along the way that caused a lot of disconnect.
Sure.
During that time, but same deal. It was a great challenge. It was a challenge in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of that culture of winning. We wanted to continue to elevate that, but we also I wanted to change the culture of the team. What I felt is, fit me and what I want to see out of a program. And so I always tell people there's no right or wrong way to run a program.
Yep.
Coaches do things differently, and for me, it was just it's important for me to be me.
Right.
And that's why I was like, not going to be somebody else.
Yeah.
And you guys need to understand that. And
yep.
And so that's what we did. I worked with my staff. I brought in, some other staff members that's, they would have wished I would have went with some other people. And so there's that, some of that stuff was met with turmoil. And so, those were probably the biggest challenge during that time, was just constantly having to win over or not win over and still continue to work together.
Sure.
Through that process. So, but it was, we had a lot of fun, and the guys did a lot of winning, and, we had a lot of success there. And Newman was, D3 Wrestler of the Year and won a couple of national championships.
Yep.
And was just, and that was kind of the highlight in terms of individual performances, right? But made the national duels finals. We got a win over Wartburg, and I think that was one of the first that happened in a long time.
Yep.
At that time, they had a streak going, and so there was a lot of positive things that were happening, on the performance side of things. So it was a really cool experience. Incredible, the older group of alumni base there, incredibly passionate about Warhawk wrestling, and
nice.
Very, very generous, and having iconic coach that kind of took them over.
Yep.
And Coach Myers, and just they wanted to give back and be a part of future success, and that was so cool to see what those guys were willing to pour into and to be able to communicate with them. It was an incredible alumni group.
Nice. So you had 4 or 5 years at Whitewater. Is that your transition then? Does that go into West Point? Is that where you wound up going over to West Point then?
Yep. So
that's an interesting move. How did that come? I mean, because it's not so much the side of the country, but you're talking about a whole different mentality of, number one, competing, whatever, but also getting athletes. Completely different.
Yeah. So it like any job change, that's not always exactly how I planned.
Sure.
Things that, I knew that somewhere down the line, Division I might be an option.
Yeah.
Going to the Midlands tournament, and actually, they didn't allow the Midlands tournament, didn't let Jordan Newman into the tournament.
Yeah.
And the year before, like, he had lost a 1-point match to Machiavelli, who was, national champion from NC State.
Yep.
And I was like, geez, we couldn't believe we couldn't get him in the tournament. I go down there to watch it and be like, just, it was kind of stirring some of those feelings. Like, I would be a good fit at the Division I level too. I knew that, but I wasn't like actively looking in that. And some things, changed within, we had a lot of success, and a lot of that generosity I was talking about was about to make some big gains for the program at Whitewater, which I was really excited about.
Yeah.
the school had some other plans in terms of how that was going to be utilized.
Yep.
And I was just realized that that's not what we worked really hard to make happen. And I happened to get a call from one of my other mentors.
Yeah.
That I met along the way, just in terms of coaching thing, and said, "Hey, I know you're frustrated with what's going on right now. I just want to let you know there's a potential job as somebody I think you might work really well with."
Yeah.
That was Coach Ward. And so I we had a phone conversation, and he let me know about the job. And at that time, it wasn't the assistant job. It was a prep school job that, had some things that there were some limitations to it that I was intrigued by. It sounded really good. I thought, just over the phone, I think we might have the opportunity to work really well together,
Yeah.
But it was just not something that I could do. It wasn't a move that I was willing to make, given what we were doing right there. And I said, "Hey, if something else opens up on, your assistant level sometime, I'd be willing to revisit this with you for sure." And so I don't know, maybe a month later, something like that.
Yep.
His assistant left, scheduled an interview, and went out there and did that. So it was.
You see a progression with you, not just as far as obviously going to different, but I notice your confidence is getting bigger, as far as where you're coaching, and you can tell, like you said, I think I would be successful at the D1 level. So your confidence is not only, building, but it's also making you realize where you need to go. So with that confidence now going into West Point and things, did things maybe kind of change a little bit as far as like the level now that you were at with those guys? And I don't even remember how West Point was back then, because I tell everybody there's a point in time where when I was done with wrestling, I kind of shut wrestling off. So there are a lot of things that I don't recall as far as athletes and things like that. Was West Point a different level for you? Was there something that you needed to maybe change in yourself when you went there? Because your confidence is pretty good already. You go, Whitewater having some decent success and, with all the guys there, but then you go into West Point. I mean, it's not just the school itself, it's the history of the school. Was that intimidating? That kind of, did that level you out a little bit more and then build from there? How'd that go?
Yeah, maybe that's a flaw of mine. Maybe I'm just overconfident. But I knew that I could coach at that level. That wasn't something that, was something that I was concerned about. My biggest concern was I'm switching roles, right?
Yep.
I've been a head coach the last 7-8 years, at a college program. Now I'm switching roles to be an assistant.
Yep.
Not a bad thing. It's just a different role, right?
Yep.
And so, my whole thought process going into that was, Coach Ward's got the vision for the program.
Yep.
Right. I need to fill in and utilize my skill sets and where he feels I fit best to complement and to help accomplish what he sees as the vision for the program.
Right.
And so really it was serving Coach Ward and serving the West Point wrestling program was at the forefront of my mind. How do I best do that? And so navigating that water as an assistant coach is a different role.
Yeah.
I don't just get to, and we're changing this because I said we're changing it. Now I got to bring an idea to somebody and say, should we think about this? This is something I'm thinking about. What do you, It was a different approach, and it really helped me grow as a coach, because it's been a while since I've been an assistant.
Yeah.
And having some knowledge of what the responsibilities of the head coach at the college level is, for Coach Ward, I think that helped me be a great assistant for him, and that I understood that, and I understood some of the things that I'm no longer responsible for.
Yeah.
And he is, and I have an understanding and appreciation, and knowing that he's got a lot on his plate in this area, I don't anymore.
Yeah.
And here's where I can help pick up the slack and do those things. So it was awesome, man. The level of kid, the level of human being there at West Point is amazing, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that's willing to step into that realm and what you're getting into it says a lot about who they are. And so working with those athletes was amazing. It was all, I mean, they were incredible kids, and Coach Ward he's a great coach, and
yep.
learned a lot from him as well. And so it was a really cool experience for sure.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 3 seasons with them. Yep.
Nice. Okay. So you're able to gain some knowledge from those guys. It's like I said, it seems like from start to finish of your wrestling career, you've been surrounded by all these guys that have, either you really, really looked up to, or guys that have proven themselves just as coaching or even on a national scene as athletes, things like that. So now with West Point under your belt, was there a thought that you wanted to leave West Point? Were you comfortable and something just jumped into your lap? What happened at West Point?
Yeah, no, I loved working at West Point, and I really enjoyed my time there. In terms of how this one came about, it was, I think I'd heard maybe the year before that Bellarmine's transitioned to Division I. I never heard of Bellarmine.
Yeah.
They already had, their I just kind of read their coach was transitioning, with them and all that. Everything was staying the same. And so I didn't really even look into the school when that first announcement came that they were transitioning to Division I,
Yeah.
Because I wasn't really looking. I was enjoying where I was at.
Right.
But yeah, the opportunity for a head coach role was something that, was of interest to me for sure.
Yep.
I enjoyed being assistant, but I still think that, I'm called to be a head coach and to lead programs. And as of right now, that's the fit. It doesn't mean that's not going to change somewhere down the line. I don't know that to be a head coach for the next 40 years. Like, I don't think so. But at the same time, like, I was intrigued by, the head coaching opportunities, and Bellarmine was, just a very unique opportunity that I thought coming here, I would learn a lot more about if I did a visit, as opposed to just trying to see something online.
Yeah.
And got an opportunity to get an on-campus interview and come check things out.
Yeah.
And it was just a good fit.
So you guys have been doing pretty good. Like I mentioned earlier, watching you guys just through this season's been pretty exciting. I mean, you've built that culture, and it seems like it's a healthy culture. A lot of the guys that are there, you can tell even in the practice room when you guys have some of your practice videos out, they look like they're not like they're running around laughing, having fun, but they're working hard, and they look like they have a reason, a goal, and that's, I think, a big thing walking into a room. You can see guys practicing till they're blue in the face. They could still look like they're not really trying to reach anything. You have guys that are in the room that are working. So when you got there, did you do the same thing? Kind of did you have the opportunity to meet with some of the athletes before you actually got the job? Kind of explain to them, hey, this is what I'm bringing. I know you guys are trying to get to D1, and I'm going to help you bring to that D1 level. What kind of conversations were you able to have I'd say before you came in?
Yeah. So after I got hired, it was my first contact with athletes.
Okay.
So that was when I, was able to kind of just kind of tell them, hey, these are some things coming up. We're going to have a team meeting to kind of go over some things via Zoom at the time, because I was still in New York.
Yep.
That good stuff. And so we started having some of those conversations with them then. But yeah, the culture thing was same deal, just like I was saying before. Like, there's no right or wrong way to coach a team, but I'm going to do it the way I do it, because that's what I know and that's what I think is best. And so that's what we did here. And we had a lot of guys stayed fired up about it. And we had some guys that, decided that's not quite what I'm looking for. And,
sure.
And, what I was really impressed with in terms of the speaks volumes of the school is that guys didn't, when I came in, guys didn't leave this program after being able to train and practice and then leave Bellarmine too, right?
Sure.
Guys decided they didn't want to wrestle anymore. There's a few of them, but Bellarmine, they wanted Bellarmine, and they stayed here at Bellarmine, which is,
okay,
a testament to the school. Like, still see those guys around campus, still, some of them have graduated now and all that stuff, but like, I think it's a huge testament to how the strength of the school and how strong the programs are here.
Yeah.
The guys said, "Oh, yes, I just didn't want to quite wrestle Division I level, but Bellarmine's a great education for me. It's going to set me up for my life." So,
well, and that's unique. I think that speaks volumes to those athletes as well, understanding that the direction you're trying to take, they weren't necessarily against it. They just knew that wasn't something that was for them and stayed at that school. Cause otherwise, you hear, oh, this guy's transferring to here. That's pretty cool
right.
for them to understand. I mean, obviously you kind of gave them a good look at what was going to be happening, so, and not necessarily that I'm going to grind you guys, but we're going to be going into D1, and these are deep waters going into D1. So it's a different, I guess, wrestling athlete relationship when it comes to trying to compete at that level. So yeah, that does speak a lot. So what is it? 2 years you've been to 2 or 3 years?
So I just finished the second season. I've been here for about 20 months.
Yep.
Yeah. So not 2 years I've been here yet, but
4 months, whatever.
Yep.
But so with the success so far that you guys have been having, and D1 is just around the corner. That's next year, correct?
So next season is our last year of transition.
Next season.
So,
okay, gotcha.
The following season we'll have our first opportunity to compete in the SoCon Conference Championship.
Nice. Okay. So what are some of the things that you guys in the room? I guess not in the room, but as a coaching staff, what have you guys had to, I guess, reevaluate or evaluate coming into the room? Like knowing that you're trying to get up to a D1, what were some of the things you guys had to kind of maybe change, or different outlook on what the program is? Anything like that have to happen?
I think the biggest part is to set the expectation and then give the guys opportunity to meet the expectation.
Sure.
And that's on the mat, off the mat, in the classroom. That's everything. Right. And, I think you hear stories a lot when there's a coaching change. A lot of coaches come in and push everybody out.
Yeah.
And so they can free up their scholarship money and this and that. And that just wasn't going to be what I was going to do. I just we're going to give every kid an opportunity to choose whether he wants to be here and get fired up about what we have going on and give me an opportunity to win them over.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the method I took is, getting to know them, showing them I cared and I cared about them and getting to know who they are and all that. And we're going to train hard, and we're going to prepare for competition, but we're not going to be overly focused on, who's doing what in competition in terms of performance. Like we're going to be overly focused on being the best wrestlers we can be. And the guys just have really gravitated towards that, and they're just growing. They're focused on growing, and that's what they're doing. And they made some big gains, and their attitude, right, their effort, their fight has been phenomenal. And that's the three things I ask of them: attitude, effort, and fight. And if they do that, then we're going to have a great time together. We're going to have a great time together. And whether we're winning or losing, that don't matter. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We need to. How we do it is what matters most. How we train, how we compete is what matters most. And I think our guys and the people I brought in, my first recruiting class, we brought in 19 kids. And so that's a big part of that. They heard my spiel, right? My first year here, I didn't get a recruiting class in, came in late or whatever, but same type of deal. Like this season, you saw a big jump because all 19 of those guys coming in heard that.
Mm-hmm.
They knew what they're getting into. They knew what my expectations were. They chose Bellarmine because of those things.
Yep.
And so you just have an instant infusion of energy, into your program with that first class. And then the returners, they're like, heck yeah, we love what's going on. We love what's doing. And they can't wait, to get that next group of freshmen that can build that team. Like, it's just been a really cool mesh of guys. And I couldn't be more proud of them for what they were able to do this year.
So we'll end it with two couple questions. The first one is going to be, what are some of the notable moments from the past 2 years that you guys have had as a team at that university? What were some of all the guys are great. It's the team is if a team bonding, but as far as was there one big moment that like your first year that pops up in your head that you remember, or even this year? What were some of the more notable moments while you were at Bellarmine so far going into this next season?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones was, October 10th, our first training day, right? That we get to have for the NCAA. So we're all on the mat together and we're leading, the wrestling practice.
Yep.
And so having the entire room, like there were some times last year where, hey, we had some of those guys fall off and we had some injuries. Like there was some times my first season where it's like we had like 7, 8 guys practicing, like they were healthy and can work out. And we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to we hobbled through the finish of the season too, right?
Yeah.
And plenty of guys on the team, but with with some of the guys leaving and some injuries and stuff and whatever, the COVID time, right? Those COVID years. So guys all the time for, being testing positive for COVID. And it's like, I just remember one day having like 8 guys practicing. I'm like, oh my goodness. This is a bad spot to be in terms of like, this is not what you want your wrestling room to be looking like. Right. But the guys were there, they were doing the right things and they kept pushing. But that first day of this season with that freshman group and all the returners coming in, I think we had 14 returners, 15 returners.
Yeah.
We actually a big senior class graduated the year before, about 7 or 8 guys.
Okay.
And so, so having that group starting the year off with like 34, 33 guys.
Yeah.
And seeing that room that first day, I was like,
yeah,
all right, now we're in the competitiveness, right? These guys came in and they're ready to, they were like, hey, they want to step in and be the best guy right now. They want to be the starters, you know? And so just that competitiveness we had of that group coming in, that was a like aha moment for me.
Yep.
As a coach. Like, we got some really cool things happening here.
Nice.
And I imagine you asked, this too, to kind of, if there is there a performance thing, right? If there's a moment performance. And, this year, having some dual meet wins in the conference, I think we finished 4th in the duals in the conference, for the dual standings. Yeah. Like being able to come back, beat Davidson, beat VMI, beat the Citadel. Yeah. Right. Beat Tyrion again. Queens is not in the conference yet, but also transitioning team. Same with Lindenwood. Have those dual meet Division I dual meet wins was really cool. And some of the fashion that we done them, we did it, and it was impressive. Like some last minute takedown type situations, some being down, and some big move pin type of situations. The team really coming together. I didn't feel like one time this year we had a consistent, like, strong performance. Yep. Across the board with 10 weight classes, but the guys continue to get consistent and more consistent with their attitude, effort, and fight. And because of that, some of the guys stepped up and had other guys' backs that didn't have a good performance. Somebody else stepped up in those duels and had a great performance for them. Nice. And were able to help us, win some of those duels and turn around some really lopsided scores the previous season into W's this year. Sure. So that was really cool. It was just cool to see and measure of progress that we get to use to help us continue to improve our wrestling.
Well, that's just coal into that fire for that locomotive that's called Bellarmine that you guys are driving. So that's awesome. So the other question I have is something you've already kind of brought up, the attitude, effort, your philosophy. So now with what you're seasoned, you've had a couple coaching jobs, and things kind of change over time when you reach a different room and certain things happen, So as you've gone through these years now, what is your philosophy in the room? What is your main driving philosophy within your room that you preach? And you did say attitude, effort, and the mantra that you have, is that your philosophy?
That's a big part of it. We break it down and get a little bit more specific. With the guys, that's something that we changed this year. You mentioned you changed the programs on, and me as a coach, like I continue to learn and evolve every day, and so, myself as a coach now, looking back at, some of the things that, I thought were great or thought were the right ways to do things in the past, is like, oh my goodness, I was so far off. Like I had no idea when I was coaching high school, this or that, and so, I think that's important for our guys to recognize too, is like, you're growing and evolving. We want a culture that we're constantly evolving. Yeah. Yep. And so, in terms of our philosophy in the room, I'm not, we work incredibly hard, but I'm not one for, I'm not big on the whole, hey, you're not meeting the standard. Everybody on the line, we're going to do a bunch of sprints type of thing. Like, I think the biggest punishment, I learned this a long time ago from Jim Grunwald. As soon as he told me that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to utilize that. That's so much smarter. I learned a lot from him, who is coached by Ben Peterson and Strong Christian, great dude. But he said the biggest punishment is not being able to work out. And I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that's 100% right. And so, if we have somebody that's not meeting the standard in some way, shape, or form, they don't get the opportunity to work out,
Right on.
And they're missing out on the opportunity to evolve. They're missing out on the opportunity to grow and to help their team grow, which they're passionate about. Right? If you come here, you're passionate not just about yourself and your own goals.
Yep.
You're passionate about building Bellarmine wrestling.
Yeah.
And so, so we do things a little bit differently, but you might see on our social media, "Can't wait" is our mantra, right? Our thing.
Yep.
And so that's the type of attitude we're wanting them to bring in. We want them to step into the room with enthusiasm, with excitement, that they can't wait to work on XYZ. And for that, it's going to look different for everybody. There isn't one wrestler I have in the room that's the same.
Right. Right. Yeah.
We're all different. And so, we do a lot of just, hey, coaching to the athlete and making sure that we have a core fundamental skill set that we teach to, but ultimately, like, these guys bring uniqueness themselves to the table. And we just try to foster that and try to keep the guys excited about that and their personal development and fired up about, the next level for them. How good can they get?
Yeah.
How good they get is not measured by how we do against competition.
Yep.
For me, how good can I get is how great at wrestling can you be?
Mm-hmm.
Like how well can you score in these positions in training, in competition, but never a focus on only national championships.
Right.
Yeah. We're going to be national champions. We're going to be this All-American. We're going to be conference champs. We're going to be this. And like, I don't know. We just don't. That stuff to me is, did you get a chance to go? I don't know if you got a chance to go to the Division I tournament this year, but you probably watched at least a bunch online if you weren't there.
Yep.
I imagine that you watched a lot of matches and saw that there was a lot of stress.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
In that whole tournament, and I don't want my team to ever experience that. I want them to experience the national tournament, but our stuff related to performance is going to be based on our attitude, is going to be on our excitement to compete, on our gratitude and thankfulness for those opportunities, right? And so that's some of the core things that we focus on in terms of our philosophy and how we train, how we interact in the community on campus, and how we compete.
Yeah.
And that's what guys that can expect from us when they come to be a part of this program.
That sounds pretty convincing, as far as wanting to be in a room that you talked about stress. And I watched a lot of matches this year and I won't name a school, but I can almost guarantee you know what I'm talking about, because their headdress now is all part of the uniform, having their heads wrapped. They look pretty stressed. There's a lot of, when you're dealing with I don't know, when you talk about storied programs or big programs, I think those kids walk into those rooms, I think, expecting a lot of themselves already. And then you have, social media, and you got all this other stuff already, all this other outside noise going on, that I think what you're saying is kind of spot on. That's already probably in their heads. I want to worry about the other stuff that they get. Yeah. You don't even need to think about it.
They don't need any help thinking about winning national championships and that, right? Like,
right.
That's a worthy pursuit, right?
Right.
Being the best in the world, or the country that's a worthy pursuit.
Yep.
That's a measurement. It's a small measurement that we get to use to challenge us and to help us grow. And if we get to do it and we get to experience the celebration at the end of a national championship, then cool. That's going to be a cool moment.
Yeah.
But it's just that. It's a cool moment.
Yep.
And
pretty much. Yep.
Then the moment's gone. then the moment's eventually it's gone and you'll be able to look back at memories, but it's a really cool moment.
We're just talking about that. It's a national tournament just got done, and I was talking to a guy. He said that there's a kid who actually had won a little while back, but he was getting all these phone calls and messages like a couple days after everything went down, and it was a week and a half after. No one was calling him anymore. All that luster goes away. It's right back to normal, back to the normal stuff. So I really love your philosophy and how you kind of see that as far as they're already thinking about it. We're here to just work. We're here to get better at something. You kind of look at it almost as track. You can't run against someone else. You're really only running against yourself in the last time that you had. So if you wrestled this guy, how well did you do the last time? Let's see if we can step it up on this one, that kind of thing. And now we tell Liam it's one match at a time. Like we're going to be going to the US Open coming up out in Vegas. It's not about it's not about who's going. What are you going to do in the first match? Like put your foot on the line. And what are you going to do right there? Just score takedowns, score points. That's all you got to do. Once you can start doing that, the rest of it comes naturally. And so I think that's a really good way to kind of be in a room, especially when you're trying not to create such a stress culture of we got to do this, and coming in and just being able to practice and get comfortable and understand the meaning of what you guys are trying to do. I think that's important. So it's pretty big. So I want to ask you one more thing. A lot of guys that are in the high school level are always kind of worried about what they're doing. Like what kind of tournaments do you guys look at? What events are you guys looking at for some of these guys that are coming up? Like, are you watching the Super 32s and the Journeyman Classics? Like, what are the tournaments that you guys are looking for just to see a kid competing at? Necessarily, of course, if he wins it, that's awesome. But what are you looking for a guy to be the type of work that you're expecting them to be putting in, what you're looking for?
Yeah. Like I tell our guys, we're looking for guys that want to challenge themselves. And so we want to see them that if they have the means to do it, like to compete in the Fargos, right? To compete in the Super 32, like you said, I know there's, the PNL, that Premier League thing that they're doing, like those are, part of those clubs can be part of that stuff. Like, great, do that. We want to see you against high level competition. Mm-hmm. The best way to not get noticed is not attend them, right? Like, out of fear that you might, hey, I won a state title in XYZ state. Yep. And I'm going to kind of ride that and I don't want to lose. Like, we see that happen. Yeah. And it's just not the mentality that we're looking for. We're looking for kids that want to be the best and want to improve themselves and want to challenge themselves against high level guys. So those tournaments are good opportunities to do that. And I understand, like, I was that guy. I didn't have the means to do that stuff. Right. So I get it. It doesn't mean that every kid has to compete in those national tournaments, but we do want to get to know you and see, are you willing to challenge yourself? Yep. And what does that look like for you? And, I think a lot of kids we get emails from, are really concerned about just the accolade type of stuff, right? They want to, highlight that they were a varsity wrestler this many years and they have this many wins and all that. Like, I don't care how many wins you got. Yeah. I want to see how you compete against the best competition. That's it. So 10-4. From that side of things, that's, that's what we want to see from guys competing and do the best you can in that regard. Well, I tell you what, you spent an hour and a half with me, man. I will. I'm gonna start with my stories here, probably. Yeah, that's what we want, though. That's what we want. So I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit. I'll get some music started here, but I'm gonna just leave you with this. I know that what you are trying to do is number one, it's complimentary to, I think, a lot of the kids that are out there. I think what you guys are doing is great. I've been watching. I know everybody else kind of around here now has been kind of paying attention and seeing how things are going now that we know some people that may or may not be going, but we definitely notice you guys. So great job. Tell Noah we appreciate everything you guys are doing. Keep that program alive down there, because I'm pretty sure there are going to be plenty more people around here paying attention. So hang out. Awesome. Once I hang up here, we'll hang out. We're going to talk for a minute, but that's been another version of the Vision Quest podcast. All of our episodes are brought to you by Appleton Tattoo, located at 117 South Appleton Street in Appleton, Wisconsin, right off the main drag on College Avenue. You can't miss them. I've had some work done. I have a Celtic cross that covers my back that was done by Jason. We're not done yet.
Jason Winans and crew, the artists that he have there, those guys are the best in the Fox Valley. They are definitely one to go to if it's something that you've just been kind of throwing around. They'll make you feel comfortable. It's a very clean environment, very nice crew, and very willing to get done whatever you need done when you need it done. You can message them on Facebook. I know they're on Facebook. You can give them a call at 920-604-8289 and get in touch with Jason Winans and crew at Appleton Tattoo, located again in Appleton, Wisconsin at 117 South Appleton Street, right in Appleton. Very flexible hours, great crew, clean environment again. I would not send you anywhere else except for these guys. Appleton Tattoo.